Kill Team Pariah Nexus came out March 6th, which is only about 4 months ago. And considering that box set had a big rules update to introduce new units that were previously missing for both Primaris and Necrons, contained a new war zone in which to play, and contained exclusive miniatures hidden behind a paywall, well, not even hidden, just behind a paywall, you can imagine how surprised I was to learn that we are getting another Kill Team box set. And I can't pretend that I wasn't pretty pissed off when I first saw this announcement. But I decided that knee-jerk reaction was something I was going to try to be an adult about, sit on for a few days and have a think about before taking to the internet to moan about it. And so that's what I'm here to do with this video, really, a discussion about some of the slimier, shittier things that GW perhaps does, but then to also balance that with just a bit of compassion and a bit of understanding for their situation and the environment into which they're releasing their products. So let's have a chat about it. So firstly, let's complete that discussion about Pariah Nexus, because I think that's important. It was kind of pushed to us as everything that Kill Team needed at the time. A rules update to include some of the glaring omissions in the Primaris and Necrons lineups, a new war zone to do battle in, and a chance to snag some sweet minis, new plastic minis, before they were released anywhere else. Okay, so firstly, let's think about the rules. Because Kill Team in its current iteration got its starter box in like August 2019. So, you know, by the March 2021 release of Pariah Nexus, it's pretty easy to say Kill Team was kind of desperate for some new rules. The exclusive miniatures are really where we hit our first snag. If social media is to believe, and I'm combining Facebook, Twitter and YouTube here as the social media platforms that I mainly use, but putting characters into box sets, you know, behind that paywall, it doesn't really seem to upset the player base too much. The issue there is really that the only people it benefits are box splitters, the eBay scalpers. I mean, they're more than happy to pump out the exclusive characters from box sets at, you know, 15 to 20 quid a go. And that offers us a saving over what we will pay when GW inevitably releases it as a standalone. But when you bear in mind what they make by selling the kill teams themselves on top of that, the terrain that's usually included in these boxes, the books and rulers, and I absolutely do see listings going for the books and rulers. In fact, I'm pretty sure that a less clued up me once bought a book and ruler pack like that. But when you add all of that together, a £95 RRP box pretty easily hits sort of 140, maybe even 150 quid when sold as individual parts. And they tend to get their hands on a fair number of copies as well, so that sort of 45 to 55 quid profit per box, you can maybe multiply it by 5 or 6, maybe even as much as 10 if they're savvy, and you're making a good few hundred quid for a very small investment of time and labour. I really wish my wages were that efficient. But then you hit the real burning issue, and that is actual, desirable, functional, playable, important units being held hostage by these box sets for lengths of time that we never really know about at time of release, and they're often wanted for not even the same game. I mean, your average 40k player pretty much definitely knows about the existence of Kill Team. So if they want to play Kill Team, they're gonna play Kill Team, but 90% of the time the things that are held hostage by the Kill Team boxes are things that we want for 40k. And in the case of Pariah Nexus, that unknown length of release time between the box set and the individual boxes ended up being about 2 months. And I'll be honest, even as someone who doesn't play Necrons, looking at, say, flayed ones, for example, that have been asked for in plastic for such a long time by this point, I'd be pretty pissed if my choices for getting flayed ones were buying a £95 box that I probably only want 5 or 6 models out of, or feeding eBay scalpers, or having to wait months. Even if I knew it was 2 months, I'd probably be a bit annoyed, but, you know, at least I'd know. And GW really need to start realising that this is a problem. And that's really the real rub, isn't it? Because they don't realise it's a problem. In fact, time and time again, we see skirmish games, or just, you know, the general release structure of box sets used as a paywall to hide new releases behind and put out in such a way that really only benefits, to a lesser extent, newer players, but mostly eBay scalpers. The net result being that the existing player base is just kind of left on the outside. So why is it that GW seemingly has this deep-seated contempt for their own customer base? Well, the sad news is, and I really hate to say it, it's because we, the enfranchised player base, kind of encourage it. I mean, to be honest, I'm even being part of the problem right now by making this video, and it doesn't feel good to know that. Because every time we get mad about it and we take to social media and we start the discussion and the discussion snowballs and expands, what we do is make GW keywords trend on those social media platforms and therefore increase GW visibility to less enfranchised people who don't necessarily care about problems like this but are going to spend their money on the products. And of course, if we stay silent, then we feel like we lose our right to complain, and so the net result is that it's just a win-win for capitalism. So let's fast forward again now to the announcements of the weekend just gone by, the Kill Team Octarius box set, the new one that's coming. Firstly, we found out that we're being treated to a complete rules redesign, and it later came to light that this wasn't just the mechanical system, but it was also the measuring system that was getting an overhaul. There's also a bunch of lovely new Orky terrain, which is great. Not only does it look amazing, but you seem to get tons of it. Although they have been caught out in the past lying about how much terrain comes in a box set, so I'll be hopeful and optimistic on that one, but I'm not 100% sure yet. But again, we find ourselves left with the sour taste of a rub. 2 new plastic kill teams, both for desirable armies, both for armies that are in desperate need of new plastics, one of which is currently about to get a refresh. It's just started getting a refresh and we're starting to get loads of Orky previews at the moment. And the other, which the community collectively seems pretty sure is imminently due a refresh. To say that now is the time to be getting into either of these armies is an understatement. It is prime time to pick up Guard or Orcs. And once again, we have exclusive plastics hidden behind a £95 paywall. It's the exact same problem once again. And let's not pretend that they don't know. They know what they're doing. And so for 40k Orc players, including myself, and for Imperial Guard players who really want to collect Deathcore of Krieg but aren't willing to take out a second mortgage to afford it, we're once again left wondering just how long we're going to be waiting until any of these models receive a separate release outside of this box set. And if you don't believe that second mortgage comment, take a look at this video by Pleasant Kenobi, which I'll link in the description, where he was comparing most expensive Warhammer units, and the most expensive points to pounds unit he could find in all of 40k was a Deathcore of Krieg unit. As always, amazing content from Vince, but also a kind of damning moment of realisation for me as a Krieg fan the first time I watched it. So let's try to put a bit more of a positive spin on this, or at least temper some of that bad feeling. What's to be done about it? What can we do? What should we expect Games Workshop to do? And how can we manage our expectations to prevent disappointment and the subsequent frustration that creates? Well, let's start with managing expectations actually, because we do need to make a few points in Games Workshop's favour in the interest of being reasonable. Firstly, we have to bear COVID-19 in mind, the boogeyman that ruined literally everyone's lives for like the past almost 18 months, also played merry havoc with GW's release schedule. Disruption to both their UK and Chinese infrastructure must have made juggling the reshuffle not an easy task. It really can't have been. So whilst it might not seem like there was a very long gap between the last Kill Team release and this one, we have to bear in mind, and again it was Pleasant Kenobi that pointed this out to me, that it probably should have been a different release schedule to this, and things probably got moved around as a result of COVID. COVID just done fucked it all. And whilst GW definitely doesn't have the best track record for spacing out updates around new releases, we can probably all remember a time where our codex was rendered obsolete or at least fundamentally changed by a new edition coming out very quickly after our codex was released. But we can't necessarily assume that that's what's happening here. So I think when we bear in mind COVID-19, we definitely have to give them a bit of a break. I think that's only fair. But what I find desperately hard to let go of is the paywalling of desirable miniatures in order to maximise sales of a box set. If you have to screw over your enfranchised player base in order to maximise sales of an upcoming product, that should probably be a sign that you need to look more into how you're distributing your product or your game components, and not a feature that you start leaning more and more into as time goes by. So what should we expect Games Workshop to do about this? As customers, what is it reasonable for us to demand? Well, to be honest, put quite simply, just better communication from the mothership, better dissemination of information. It really does very little harm to announce the release of this Kill Team Octarius box set, but then at the same time give us the concrete release date for the individual boxes of the items in it, so that those who only want the contents and not the whole box set, or suppose parts of the contents and not the whole box set, can at least weigh up and make informed purchasing decisions. Moreover, when Pariah Nexus was announced, it really wouldn't have done too much harm to say this will be the last release for the current edition of Kill Team, but there are plans in the future for a new edition to come out, so make sure you watch this space if you're a fan of Kill Team or whatever. They did similar to this around the release of 9th edition 40k. They told people, you know, that a new edition was coming, and it doesn't do any harm. In fact, it just gets people more excited. So I don't see how it would really, at least majorly, damage product sales. But as far as I can see it, there are really only two reasons why you wouldn't do these things. And they are a fear over releases being less profitable if you're honest with your customers, and a lack or inability of planning. And neither of those are things that we, as the customer base, should be happy to foot the bill for, my friends. It shouldn't be too much to ask for a company that we collectively invest millions annually in to just be a bit better at keeping us in the loop. Remember, we're not talking about an indie or a single person operation here. We are talking about the single largest wargames company on the planet, with no competition coming even close to them in terms of scale and profitability. And again, I want to be very clear here. I know and I sympathise that in a world of COVID-19, planning has been no easy task. I know that mistakes are more likely to be made when people are stretched thin, but if you're gonna end the year recording record annual profits, it's not really a big leap for your audience to just want a little transparency. And so I feel like it's fair to expect this. And the last thing I want to talk about is what we could be doing in the face of this, how we can discourage the behaviour, why it matters to discourage this kind of behaviour from companies that we spend money with. Firstly, the important point of action here is just to wait. Don't make a final decision on how you feel about a product as soon as it's announced. Try to just take a step back, have a little think about it, consider if the content is something you want, whether or not the product is actually for you or not, and whether or not you're willing to spend your money on it. Once we've given ourselves a few minutes to just think about things like this, it's a lot easier to make informed choices and not just jump straight on social media to either take part in the hype or the bitching, both of which help Games Workshop sell products, remember. As humans, we are allowed to change our minds. We have the agency to do so. We can decide at the day of an announcement that we're not super hype about a product, and then take some time to think about it and conclude that, no, actually, we are pretty hype about this product. You don't have to pick a tribe at 0 hour, and you certainly don't have to stick to it. And the second point of action, I think, the second thing we need to do is wait. If the releases aren't for you, but they contain components that you do want, hold your horses a little bit and see if that announcement comes. Try to not jump in and throw your money at the product, and wait for the bits that you actually want from it to come out and be released individually. Try not to put money into the hands of eBay scalpers, and try not to waste your money on a £95 box that you only want 5 minis from. You can conserve that cash and reap the benefits down the line when you've got more hobby funds to spend on things that you will get just as much joy out of, but won't leave you with the feel-bads. And I understand that if you have, a looming tournament or something, it can be really hard to justify not turning up with the new hotness, but most of us aren't in that situation. The majority of us, the majority of you watching this video, the worst situation might be that you've got a game coming up against your mate and you want to test the new unit, and your mate's probably going to let you proxy the unit. They're probably not going to be that bothered. So you, for most of us, can probably afford to just hold your horses for a while. Warhammer is hard to keep up with. Even worse if you play more than one game. Kill Team has been identified by Games Workshop as a product that they can use to enfranchise players and get them spending more money on other products. So we have to try not to be too surprised when we see this kind of thing happening. We're probably going to see more of it going forward. You are more likely to change your behaviour and the way you approach Warhammer than Games Workshop are to change the way that they sell it. And don't get me wrong, at the same time, we should be able to expect reasonable standards from the people that we spend our money with. We have to be able to offer compassion and understanding in one hand whilst making our demands with the other. And considering the scope and scale of the task that GW sets for themselves year on year, they do a remarkably good job. I mean, sure, they could do better in some areas, of course they could, but at the end of the day, we wouldn't spend a penny with them if we didn't love the things they make. So hopefully this little slice of my perspective can at least prove helpful to a few folks for finding their own, not just around this one specific release, but in the way GW puts out their releases in general. I, for one, will probably buy the Octarius box set because I'm just a stone cold mark when it comes to Kill Team releases, but I'll get a ton of joy out of that, out of both the modelling side of getting the Kill Teams ready and in playing with them on the battlefield. And that's really kind of what it's all about, isn't it? That childish joy and enthusiasm is probably the single most precious thing in the wargaming hobby. So fuck it, I'm in. So don't forget to do all the YouTubey things, folks, all of those, and have a look in the comments if you want to support the channel, because there's a bunch of links in there for different ways that you can do that. Until next time, folks, I do want to wish you happy hobbying. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. So bye-bye for now.